Hey everybody! So, judging by the top performing videos on this channel, it's clear that most of you watching are attracted to topics regarding international relations. While I don't think today's video about Lithuanian relations with Georgia will do as well as similar videos with Poland and Latvia, I think it's still a very interesting relationship to look at. Just before we get started, I wanted to give a special shout out to the generous supporters who recently became members of the YouTube channel, like Lithuanian Guy 1. If you'd like to support the channel in the same way, there's a link in the description. But with all of that out of the way, let's get started. So while official diplomatic relations between Georgia and the Republic of Lithuania began on September 16, 1994, the modern-day closeness seems to stem from what happened to Georgia in 2008. In case you didn't know, in August 2008, the Eurasian country was invaded by Russia.
Georgia said it was trying to retake control of South Ossetia, the breakaway province on Russia's border that's policed by Russian peacekeepers.
But nobody knows what's going to happen. Nobody knows if Russia eventually moves to use all its military might against Georgia, because in that case, Georgia doesn't stand a chance.
This 5-day war between the two countries resulted in the deaths of several hundred people and was concluded with an EU-mediated ceasefire agreement. After Russia's advance into Georgia and the ceasefire agreement that followed, Russia recognized the regions of Abkhazia and South Ossetia as separate republics and independent countries. Joining Russia in this recognition were, and continue to be, Nauru, Nicaragua, and Venezuela. However, most other countries around the world recognize these regions as occupied territories that are still part of Georgia. According to TrueLithuanian.com, Lithuania was quick to take a bold stance in supporting Georgia and condemning Russia's actions. In a press release issued on the 10th anniversary of the war, Lithuania's Prime Minister said, "We will never recognize the annexation of the Georgian territories. We have always strongly supported Georgia's territorial integrity and will continue our support." To be fair, it wasn't just Lithuania that condemned Russia's actions. Indeed, in response to the invasion, all three Baltic nations saw protests and demonstrations against Russia's actions. An article by DW puts it nicely, so I'll quote them here. History helps explain why Baltic leaders offered to help Georgia. Soviet tanks crushed 22 years of Baltic independence in 1940, deporting Estonians, Latvians, and Lithuanians to Siberian gulags. After a 3-year German occupation during World War II, the Soviets regained control of the Baltics until communism crumbled in 1990. So a resurgent Russia, flexing its military muscle near its border in Georgia, gives the Balts a sense of déjà vu. A separate DW article includes a fairly haunting quote by a Latvian woman who said in 2008, "Today it's Georgia, tomorrow it's Ukraine, the day after tomorrow it's Latvia." It's this shared sense of hatred against the Russian government and its actions that seems to have united much of the region. It's something that we briefly looked at between Latvia and Lithuania, and it's clear that this extends to Georgia. But even before 2008, the countries had already begun cooperating. In 2005, the Lithuanian Development Cooperation contributed nearly 2 million euros in funding to support projects in the fields of Euro integration processes, democracy and human rights, strengthening civil society, regional development, promoting women's economic and social activity, and improving health protection. There also exists a Georgian-Lithuanian Intergovernmental Commission on Economic Cooperation, a relationship that has been ongoing since 2015. In the past few years, Lithuania has been actively participating in helping the country to resolve its political crisis, which erupted after elections in 2020. In addition to this, Lithuania has, on several occasions in 2021, donated COVID vaccines to Georgia. Most recently, Lithuania has explicitly expressed its support for Georgia's bid to become a member of the European Union. Things have been mostly smooth between the two countries, but there has been one notable blip in recent times with a story that emerged in October 2021. It was then that thousands of alleged security service files were leaked, which seemed to document the wide-scale and long-running state surveillance of journalists, clergymen, diplomats, and others in Georgia. U.S. diplomats, Israel's ambassador, and other diplomatic missions in the Georgian capital of Tbilisi were some of the more notable targets of wiretapping and surveillance. But it's not all serious business and politics connecting Lithuania and Georgia. In fact, there have been a few more moves that are on the more symbolic side, but great to see nonetheless. On May 3, 2018, the State Commission of the Lithuanian Language decided to introduce the authentic name of Georgia as the official name for the country in the Lithuanian language. Made official at the start of 2021, the authentic name, Sakartvelo, has now officially replaced the previous Lithuanian name for the country, which was Gruzia. This decision made Lithuania the first country to mention Georgia by the name established in the Georgian language. As a friendly reciprocal gesture, Georgia issued the recommendation of establishing the name Lietuva as the official name for Lithuania in the Georgian language, instead of Litva. The other symbolic gesture of friendship throughout the years has been an exchange of votes in the annual Eurovision Song Contest. TrueLithuania.com notes that the two countries typically exchange points with each other and have been one of the few country pairs to regularly do this, despite not being geographically or linguistically related. Georgia gave Lithuania 10 points in 2021 and 5 points in 2022. Meanwhile, Georgia hasn't qualified in the past few years and thus hasn't received any points in return. From my own day-to-day experience, I noticed quite a lot of Georgian restaurants throughout Vilnius. There are also a few in Kaunas as well. Considering the size of these cities and how far away Georgia is from Lithuania, I find it quite interesting, and it makes me wonder if the close relationship between the two countries is somehow a factor in the prevalence of these restaurants in Lithuania. If anyone knows the answer to this, please drop it in the comments. In my research, I also tried to reach out to Georgians living in Lithuania to see if there was a cultural and interpersonal angle worth reporting. One person told me that she's never experienced any kind of tension with local Lithuanians. She even adds that because she's Georgian, the local response might be even better, which sounds pretty great to me. Someone else I talked to, who has partial Georgian ancestry, tells me that when this part of her family migrated to Lithuania in the late 90s, they felt a little uncomfortable. She suspects that this was because Lithuanians were very conservative and were unsure how to interact with people who had a different approach to life and looked so different. These Georgian family members didn't immediately feel accepted, but instead had to prove themselves as good people. But with this small sample size of 2 sources, it's hard for me to make any broader generalizations from these stories. But just as I was about to finish this project, I did come across a 10-year-old video from the YouTube channel Universiteto Žurnalistas that asked people in Vilnius about their thoughts on Georgia. Here are some of the highlights.
What do I know about Georgia? Not much. The wine, Georgian wine, capital Tbilisi, and one Georgian guy here called David.
Žinau boržomį, žinau gruzinišką vyną, kad kariauja su Rusija, kariavo.
And that's it. I don't know much about Georgia. The food, yeah, Georgian food is good as well.
Ką aš žinau apie Gruziją? Žinau, kad yra daug labai fainų ir draugiškų žmonių, kad jie labai mėgsta vyną, kad labai draugauja su lietuviais ir kad lietuviam iš tikrųjų Gruzijai labai patinka ir žinoma labai charizmatiški ir faini vyrai.
But if I had to draw a conclusion, I would say that relations between Georgians and Lithuanians are quite good. Again, if you watching have anything to add, please leave a comment. But I think that's it for me when it comes to my understanding of the relationship between Lithuania and Georgia. On a cultural level, it doesn't seem like anything stands out in particular as negative. Politically, it appears that Lithuania is working hard to support the development of the country in the hopes that it will remain free and independent from further Russian interference. At a 2019 event celebrating Georgia's Independence Day, Georgian Parliament Speaker Irakli Kobakidze had this to say. Lithuania started its fight for independence in the 19th century. Georgians and Lithuanians were fighting side by side against the Soviet regime for their independence, and the fight was a success. Now, Lithuania is a role model for us. So did you know about the relationship between Lithuania and Georgia? And is there anything I missed that needs to be added? Leave a comment down below and let me know. As always, thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you next time.